Listen up, real estate investors, entrepreneurs, and agents. You're in the right place. Unlocking the secrets to real estate investing and entrepreneurship. Welcome to the Titanium Vault, hosted by RJ Bates III. Here's RJ.
Hey guys, welcome to the Titanium Vault. I'm your host, RJ Bates. Today I'm sitting down with Terry White. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. And you, RJ?
Man, it's just another day in paradise. Just taking care of business over here in Fort Worth, Texas. Looking forward to getting some deals closed today. It's always a good day when you can say that. So,
absolutely.
Why don't you take a quick second to kind of introduce yourself and tell the listeners what it is that you do in the real estate world?
Well, my name's Terry White, and I currently own SunWest Escrow and SunWest Trust. I started out in the escrow business, which here in New Mexico, which we're not too far away from each other, but here in New Mexico, we have a thing called real estate contracts, which is a way that sellers can sell property and act as the bank. And so my escrow company, we basically act as a mortgage servicing company for owner financing. And in that company, we service about 5,000 accounts. And then about 15 years ago, I started SunWest Trust. And in SunWest Trust, we act as custodian for self-directed IRAs. So a lot of people don't know when IRAs were created back, I think in 78, you could invest in anything that you wanted other than life insurance and collectibles. But most people don't know that because banks and brokerage houses can spend a lot more money in advertising. So we're kind of in a niche market that's gotten bigger and bigger over the years. We allow people to invest in real estate, which we'll probably talk a little bit about today. And then basically they can invest in anything. Again, the only restriction is life insurance and collectibles. So that's what we do. My companies do, but as you and I have talked before the podcast, I do a lot of real estate investing myself. And in fact, I'm actually, something I didn't mention to you, as I'm getting into the winemaking business. And we're actually going to start a vineyard here in the next year or so. So I got a lot of exciting things going on.
Is that a passion project for you?
Well, it's kind of funny. It's evolved from, it started out as a sand soccer field. If you know anything about that, my boys all play soccer. Okay. And then it grew into, we had to have a clubhouse for people to, get out of the sun and stuff. And then, in order to do that, you've got to be able to serve beer. And so we, here in New Mexico, there's a thing called a wine grower's license that you have to make wine, but then you can serve local beers. So we're working on getting that license. And then in order to do that, you've got to have 50% of your grapes have to come from New Mexico. And we've got some land. So we're going to plant our own vineyards. So 3 or 4 years from now, we'll be growing our own grapes and making our own wine, and hopefully people will be playing soccer and volleyball and having a good time.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. That's a cool little story how that kind of evolved to where you're going to be creating your own vineyard there.
Yeah, it's funny how things evolve like that. I'm sure you've got those stories where basically the trust company came around because of the escrow business, because I was in the escrow business, and back in the late 90s, early 2000s, you probably weren't even born yet, but mortgages were really easy to get. And so people were paying off contracts like crazy, and I was losing business. So I had to come up with another idea, something else. And basically the escrow business and the trust business, the kind of trust business we do, is just a record keeping business. So it all fit together pretty well.
Well, let's talk about the escrow business first, and then we'll jump into the trust. You kind of briefly went over, the fact that y'all are a debt servicing company for owner finance. But break that down for the listeners that maybe aren't as familiar with owner finance or are looking to get into owner finance, what specifically that means.
Well, so I am specific to New Mexico, but I'm sure there are some sort of owner finance vehicles in every state in the country. Even just a basic note and mortgage, we service a lot of the. So basically, let's just make it simple, RJ. You have a house that you own free and clear, and you decide to sell it. Well, you can either get a buyer to give you cash, or you can get a buyer and say, hey, I'll take 10% down, and the remaining 90%, you can pay me monthly payments, pay me 6-7% interest, and then you'll just get monthly payments for a period of time. You can have balloons and that kind of stuff. So what my company does is they accept those monthly payments from the buyer. We keep track of the interest and the principal, and then we forward the payments on to wherever the seller tells us to send them. A lot of times it's direct deposit in their account or something. So we're just the record-keeping company. We hold the documents so that if something were to happen to you as the seller, the buyer could still get clear title to the property when they finish paying it off.
Do y'all escrow the taxes and the insurance as well?
Yes, we do. If that's something that's needed. A lot of the contracts that we deal with are what are called wraps. And so they wrap an underlying mortgage.
Yep.
And a lot of times when you wrap an underlying mortgage, the underlying mortgage takes care of the taxes and insurance. So the only ones we escrow the taxes and insurance on are the free and clear properties where there's no one holding that.
See, that's funny because we do a lot of wraps, ourselves. And the underlying mortgages that we have, because they're considered investment loans, is what the bank says, we don't escrow taxes and insurance on our underlying mortgage. So when we do wrap those, we do have our debt servicing company still escrow the taxes and insurance because our mortgage is not doing it.
Yeah.
So it's interesting how each individual kind of scenario plays out there. And that's why having a debt servicing company like yourself is so important, because you can basically handle all of those different scenarios and situations.
Yeah, and our escrow company is basically regional, meaning that we service contracts in New Mexico, all over New Mexico. We have a few land contracts and stuff like that in Texas, a few deeds of trust in Colorado, but we've never really taken that business nationwide like our trust company is.
So let's move on to the trust company. And for me, this is always something that I'm enamored by, and it's because there's so many different opportunities to work with people that have self-directed IRAs, either as that's a source of private capital that you can either partner with or utilize. It's an opportunity for us as investors to personally invest, so we can eventually invest that money into other people's deals. But what drew you to creating the trust company or the self-directed IRA company that you have?
I'm not really sure. I'm an accountant by education. And so because of my background, even at a younger age, I was always thinking about putting money away for the future and that kind of thing. And so again, it was just another record keeping business for us. It was and something that I understood. I was a partner in another company back in 1995 of another trust company. And my interest then was to do self-directed IRAs. And my partners were more interested in the traditional trust business. So I sold out of that. And then in 2003 is when I started SunWest Trust. But it's just kind of a cool thing, like you talked about. It's a source of money that people that are looking for money don't realize the value there. I mean, I think there's $9 trillion in, now I could be wrong on that. I may be mixing up my numbers, but there's 42 million IRAs. I know that. And it's a huge amount of money. And, if you're the type of person that understands investing, different types of investing, it's a great opportunity. Now, I'm the first person that will tell you that self-directed IRAs are not for everybody. It's simply because people just don't understand investing. And if that's, and I doubt any of your audience are those people, but if one of those people are listening, they'd probably be better off just to leave their money in mutual funds and stuff like that. But if there's someone who wants to be involved a little bit and wants to learn and understands investing, it's a great opportunity to get a better return and have a tangible asset in their individual retirement account, as opposed to, some stock or bond that somebody else is in control of.
Out of the 42 million IRAs, how many of those are self-directed IRAs?
That's a tough thing to know, but I'm in a thing called RITA, Retirement Industry Trust Association, which is an association of companies like mine. And we feel like there's about 3 to 5%. So it's a pretty small number.
Yeah.
But it's a pretty small percentage, but it's still a large number when you think of 3 to 5% of 42 million. And a lot of that is because of a lack of education. I don't know how many people I talk to or talk to people on my staff that say, well, my CPA tells me this is illegal, or how come I never knew about this? And we even have CPAs call weekly and say, I didn't know you could invest your money in your IRA in a piece of real estate.
That's amazing, because in our small little world, in the real estate investing world, every event, every RIA, every education program that you go to, there's some sort of self-directed IRA company there as a sponsor and trying to explain that. So as an investor, I feel like self-directed IRAs are like commonplace. Mm-hmm. But then out of the 42 million, you're talking about 3 to 5%. I mean, that's nothing, Yeah. And like you said, to kind of make that a little bit more of a realization. I mean, to some people, they should not have self-directed IRAs. But, for the people that are listening to this and are interested, why should you opt to have a self-directed IRA over a traditional or other IRA options?
Well, that's hard for me to give you an answer. I can give you some reasons why people do. And I'm not, I have to be careful because I don't give investment advice. And so I don't want anybody to say, well, Terry said I should have a self-directed IRA, and then they go out and lose all their money. That's not what we want to do. But again, the reason I have a self-directed IRA, and I have both, I have a regular conventional IRA that's invested in stocks and bonds, and I don't even know what it's invested in, to be honest with you. I have a guy that takes care of that for me, and I get a statement once a quarter. But then I also have my own self-directed IRA that's actually at SunWest Trust, and I have that invested in, I've got some precious metal, just kind of as a hedge. I've got a lot of real estate debt. I don't actually own any real estate in my IRA, just haven't done it yet, but I buy debt. So, we talked about my escrow company servicing owner financing. Well, there's a whole market out there to buy that debt from people, because someone might think today that they want to get that $1,000 a month for the next 10 years. And then 2 or 3 years down the road, they see that brand new, Raptor or something they want to buy, Corvette. And then they want to sell that debt and get rid of that $1,000 a month and get a lump sum of money. So I buy those, and I have that in my IRA. And the reason I like a self-directed IRA is I feel like I have more control, so I can do what I want. There are some restrictions, and we can talk about those as we go along. But the other thing is it's just tangible. I mean, like I said, with my regular IRA, or what I would call a traditional IRA, I don't know what's in it. There's some mutual funds or something, and I've got a guy at I don't even know what brokerage house he's at, to be honest with you. He's a friend of my son's. But with my self-directed IRA, I know exactly what's in it. And if I owned a piece of real estate, I could drive by that and say, my IRA owns that house, or I own the debt on that house. And if the people quit paying, then you've got to be careful how involved you get, but I can see that things are done to make sure that pays off. Right. And so you can be involved a little bit. There's some fine lines you have to kind of be careful with, but and the other side of that too, RJ, is like, let's say I'm the type of person that I really don't understand real estate, but I find a guy like you, or I find somebody that flips houses, and I just want to be the bank for them. That's a great opportunity too. And that's a great way to help our economy, in my opinion, because now you're stepping out, you're providing income for somebody who's creating jobs and doing something and providing home ownership for other people. So I think that's a great opportunity too.
Yeah. And I think you've kind of covered some of these, but let's go over like some of the main ways that you can invest in real estate using a self-directed IRA. What are those main ways?
Okay. So the first thing is obviously owning the real estate directly. So if you have enough money in your IRA, even if you don't have enough to own a piece of property free and clear, you can have debt in your IRA. So let's say you find, and I just use 100,000 because that's easy. I don't know if $100,000 house exists. It's hard to find around Albuquerque. Maybe in Fort Worth you can find those. But so let's say there's a house, $100,000 house. You've only got, let's say 30 in your IRA. Well, you can, let's say a little more than that because it's hard to find the right kind of debt. But let's say you have 50 in your IRA. You can put $30,000 or $40,000 down and get a note on that house. Now, that note has to be non-recourse, and I'm sure you're familiar, your listeners are probably familiar with what that means. But basically, it means that if you don't pay the note, the only thing that the lender can do is take the property back. They can't go back against you or against your IRA for any deficiency. And typically, you don't run into those because you have a decent sized down payment. But so you could own a piece of property that way. You could own it if, let's say, you had $110,000 or $20,000 in your IRA. You could buy that $100,000 house and pay cash for it. So those are two nice ways. The other way is that you can have debt on it. So you can do a couple of things there. You could buy debt, like I've talked about. You mentioned in your market that there's some of that, and there's huge seminars all over the country of cash flow seminars and stuff like that, where you can learn how to buy debt. But you can do that in your IRA, which is one of the things I do. You could also lend money. Just a quick story about one of my clients, one of my favorite clients. We've gotten to the point where I don't know a lot of our clients, but this was a story that happened a few years ago. I had a lady call, and so in your IRA, I have already said you can't buy life insurance and collectibles. The other thing is you can't invest with a disqualified party. So disqualified parties are your family, yourself, and people that provide services to your IRA. And it's interesting, the IRS defines family as ascendants and descendants, so your kids and your parents. So my IRA can't do business with me individually, and it can't do business with my kids. So this lady called, and she had a nephew who was a house flipper. And so a nephew is not defined as family by the IRS. So what she does is she lends her nephew money out of her IRA to allow him to flip houses. And I think she charges him, 7-8% interest, which is a great return for her, better than she could get if she was in the stock market. Well, maybe not. Who knows about the stock market? But it's definitely better than she could get on some kind of a guaranteed return from a bank or something.
Right.
And that's a great interest rate for a flipper, because a lot of times they're used to paying 10 or 12 or 15% interest. So
right.
It works out well for both of them. She's very happy. She's got a retirement income higher than she could have gotten if she left her money in a CD at the bank. And her nephew has a source of capital. And I think she's even set up some of this kid's other aunts, some of her sisters, not her mother, not his mother, because she's disqualified. But I think there's 4 or 5 members of this family, and 2 or 3 of them help this nephew with his flipping business by lending money.
That's
so you
awesome.
can lend money on real estate.
That's awesome. So real quick, you talked about you can't use your own IRA to purchase a property for yourself, right?
Correct.
So how can you own a piece of real estate using your self-directed IRA?
Well, you can own an investment property. So think about if you and I were to go in together and buy a piece of property, we would form an LLC or something. So look at the IRA as that LLC kind of. So the income that comes from that investment property would go back into the LLC, all right? And you wouldn't be too happy if I took that money myself every month. You'd be a little irritated with me. So the same thing goes with an IRA. I cannot personally benefit from that property while it's in my IRA. So the rental income that comes from that property goes back into the IRA. By the same token, although you might like me paying for things on this rental property that you and I have out of my own pocket, but that's not the right way to do it. The LLC has to pay for those expenses. In the same way, the IRA has to pay those expenses. So if you have to get, the toilet unclogged, or you have to have some plumbing work done or electrical work, the IRA has to pay those expenses. So you look at the IRA as a completely separate entity and make sure that it receives the benefit from the real estate and that it pays the expenses of the real estate. And as long as you do that and you're careful and diligent about that, you're going to be okay. That's the way it should operate.
Excellent. And at what point in time can you touch the money in a self-directed IRA?
Great question. So if you have there's 2 types of IRAs, and one is called a traditional IRA, not to be confused with traditional investments in the IRA. It's a traditional IRA. And what that means is the contributions you make to that are pre-tax. So in other words, we're past April 15th now, but if you had gone to your CPA before April 15th, they might have told you, hey, RJ, if you put $5,000 into your IRA, it's going to save you $3,000 in your taxes. So a lot of people do that because it comes out of your income and you don't have to pay tax on it when you put it into the traditional IRA. So with a traditional IRA, you can start taking the money out of it without penalties when you're 59 and a half. And then when you take that money out, it's just included in your normal income. So you would pay taxes on it at that time. And then when you turn 70 and a half with a traditional IRA, you have to start taking the money out. It's called required minimum distributions. So that's a traditional IRA. There's another thing called a Roth that if I were your age, I would encourage people, younger people, to contribute to a Roth. The money that you put into a Roth is after-tax money. So in other words, it's not going to save you anything. It's not going to have any tax savings today. But you put that money into a Roth. Once you've had that Roth, well, there's two requirements. You have to have had the Roth for 5 years, and you have to be 59 and a half. But if you're over 59 and a half and you start taking the money out of a Roth, it's tax-free. So all the income, all that profit that you make over the years, when you turn 59 and a half and you want to start taking it out, it's tax-free. So the Roth is just a huge gift that the IRS has given us, and especially for a younger person, because you have so much time to build up tax-free profit in that account. The other nice thing about a Roth is you don't have to start taking it out when you're 70 and a half. There are no required minimum distributions from a Roth. So that's kind of a hard thing to understand. Why would somebody not want to take money out of their account? But you wouldn't believe how many people we take care of their IRAs, that they don't need the money out of that IRA. They've done well enough on their own, and they want to leave that money to their heirs, to their kids. So that's a huge value to a Roth because you don't have to start taking it out. And then when it goes to your kids, it's still tax-free. Now they have to start taking it out. There's some rules about that we probably don't want to go into on the show. But the idea is it's just if you can do something inside that Roth that creates a huge return or any kind of return, but a big return would be good, that's tax-free income.
Excellent. So you've mentioned a couple times in the interview so far about buying debt and the benefits of doing that. What are some of the benefits of buying debt compared to buying an actual asset like a piece of real estate like I do, and then I create the debt? What's the benefit of going in and just buying the debt itself?
Well, the thing I like about buying debt is I get a fixed return based on what I pay for it. I don't have to deal with leaky faucets and toilets and stuff like that because the people that are paying me are actually owners. So it's their responsibility to take care of that. There's also the option that I might get that property back one of these days. So anyone who's thinking about buying debt, my number one thing to tell them is don't buy debt on a piece of property that you don't want to own because there is always the chance that you might own that. And I tell you that from experience because I have bought debt on property that I didn't want to own and I ended up owning it. And so that's a problem. But it's just another way to invest in real estate that, you trade. I was going to say you don't have any headaches, but you still have headaches. You trade some headaches for some different headaches. So I don't have to deal with leaky faucets at 2:00 in the morning, but I do have to deal with buyers who don't pay their payments on time. I may end up having to take a house back. And most cases when you take a house back, it's not in great shape. So, I've had to go in and fix them up. But with few exceptions, if I was paying attention to what I was doing, I've not lost money on those deals where I've had to take the property back. And in a lot of cases, I've made a lot more money by taking it back than I would have made had they gone ahead and paid their payments.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I had a great conversation with Grant Kemp on the show a couple of months ago about this. And, everyone talks about wanting to create passive income within real estate investing. Mm-hmm. And more often than not, that leads to owning rental properties. Owning rental properties is not passive income.
No.
It's just not. This is about the purest form of passive income within real estate investing. Like you said, there's always going to be a downside. There's always going to be headaches.
Potentially, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's just the nature. If you do any sort of volume, I mean, if you own 100 notes, there's going to be a couple that don't pay you, and there's going to be headaches. But outside of that, more often than not, this is a very pure form of passive income within real estate investing. And that's why, honestly, we're converting a lot of our rentals to owner financing and then carrying the debt. Is just based off of I'm tired of getting the calls about the leaky faucets and the toilets being clogged and things along those lines. When you go out and you have an opportunity to buy the debt on a property, it's already sold. Someone's living there. It's their house. It's not like buying a home. You can't go in there and walk the property. So how do you perform that due diligence to know if it's a house that you wouldn't mind owning?
Well, you're right. You don't know what the inside of the property looks like, but I think you would probably agree with me. A lot of times you look at the outside of a house and it'll tell you what the inside looks like.
Right.
If they're not taking care of the yard and stuff, they're probably not taking care of the inside. And that's not always a bad thing. I mean, I look at when I buy debt, first thing I look at is the down payment that the people made. I typically don't buy any debt unless the buyer put at least 10% down. Now I say typically because I have bought it, with lower down payments, but I would think for a beginner, excuse me, for someone that's trying to get into this, I wouldn't look at anything with less than a 10% down payment up front. Make sure that down payment was really cash, because sometimes people do some interesting things. The other thing you can look at is payment histories. I mean, if I find something that they didn't have a 10% down payment to begin with, but they've been paying on it for 5 years and they've been paying well, I would probably take a chance on that. And when I say the property that I wouldn't mind owning, it doesn't necessarily mean that that's a pristine, clean house that I would buy as a rental property or for myself to live in. But it's in an area that I'm comfortable with. It's a reasonable, it looks like it's got good bones from the outside. It's not falling apart. If I end up having to take that back, I mean, I could tell you some stories about stuff, some houses that I've been in, that we hauled dumpsters full of garbage out of. But that's kind of the chance you have to take, is you go in and you have to fix those up and you have to spend some money to turn around and sell it.
So let's say for someone like me that is converting rental properties to owner finance, and I get a 10% down payment, what would be the going rate, or what would you be willing to pay me percentage-wise of the debt?
Everybody asks that question, and that's not a question that I can answer specifically, because it depends on the interest rate that you're receiving on your note. It depends on the payment history and how long the payment history has been going. It depends on the down payment. It depends on the location of the property. So just to give you an idea, and all of the notes, I'm not like some of the note buyers you probably had on your show that buy notes all over the country. I buy them within 20-minute drive of where I am right now, because I'm just lazy and I don't like to go out that much. But so if I were to buy here in Albuquerque, we have a place called the East Mountains, Moriarty, a little town called Moriarty. I have bought mobile home and land packages there that I've paid maybe 60 cents on the dollar, so 60% of what the note was. And I still ended up getting, I almost said a bad word there, but I still ended up losing money.
Right.
And so I've bought, single family homes here in Albuquerque, contracts on single family homes here in Albuquerque that have done great. One of the stories that came to mind just real quick is I bought a mobile home and land in Belen, New Mexico, which is south of here. And that violated my 20-minute rule because it's about an hour drive down there. But the guy that I originally bought, the guy that was paying on it when I originally bought it, defaulted within a year. And I took the property back. But before I could get down there, somebody had broken in and stolen the motor out of the air conditioner and the motor out of the heater. They stole everything. Fortunately, I got renter's insurance the minute I the minute I took the property back. So the insurance company paid for a big part of that. But I fixed that mobile home up. It's on an acre of land. I sold it to another couple. Basically, I think for 1 month's pay, like one payment down. So they didn't give me 10% down. Those people have been paying me for about 12 years. I sold them that property for $60,000. And the other day, I just calculated the amount of the payments they have given me. They've paid me over $94,000 over the years, and they still owe me $27,000.
Right.
So, now you need to look. That's a cash on cash return. That's not but my interest rate on that was still probably about 17% is what I'm earning. So, that was something that looked like it was going to be bad that turned out good. And these are really good people. They pay on time every month. I think in the 12 years they paid me, they've missed one payment. And they had kind of a rough time. So I just let them miss that payment and added it onto the back of the contract. So there's a lot of really cool
I'm always interested in, because it doesn't logically make sense for me. So maybe you will make this make sense. Why, as someone who is buying a note, why do you care how much I got for a down payment?
Well, the reason I care is because that shows me how committed the buyers are. So in other words, if I bought a property from you and I gave you $500 down, it's not going to bother me to walk away from that, and just let you have the property back. If I gave you $5,000 down or $10,000 down, I'm going to work a lot harder to make sure I don't lose that. So the amount of money that the buyer puts down shows their commitment to staying in that property and keeping that property. Does that answer the question? I mean, it's just
a little bit.
matter of commitment.
It does. And the reason why I ask is because the kind of the niche that I found in owner financing is that we owner finance a lot of houses between the price points of $150,000 to $220,000, which is actually, and I don't know this to be a fact, but from what I've seen, higher than the average owner finance investor. Y'all are usually staying in the $50,000 to $100,000 range. And so when I go and I owner finance a $190,000 house, to ask for $19,000 down payment, that's a lot of money. I mean, and I'm okay with getting a $10,000 down payment. And so anytime I interview people that talk about this, and you're always like 10%, and I'm like, am I making mistakes because I'm only taking 10,000 down? But we haven't had any defaults yet, and it's more about the ability. It allows us to have the ability to owner finance these higher end properties, and also the other thing is our interest rate is actually higher. We actually charge 10% interest on all of our owner finance. So again, this all goes back to there's many different ways to do this, but I it does make sense what you're saying there about the level of interest with the buyer, because I am thinking about, there was a property in Jackson, Mississippi, that we did a similar thing to what you did. A tenant moved out, and I just needed someone to go in there and start paying me, and so I quote unquote owner financed it, and I just took the first month's payment as the down payment, and they ended up defaulting on it.
Well, and the thing too, RJ, it's a matter of the amount of risk that you're willing to accept. And in your situation, first of all, you mentioned that you convert a lot of renters to owner financing. Well, in that situation, if you had somebody renting from you for a few years and they paid the rent well and they took care of the property, then I might be willing to take a lower down payment. And you also knew the house. I mean, that house inside and out. So what the value of that property is, where if I'm just buying a contract from somebody who sold it a few years ago, I don't know all those details. That's one reason why I would encourage everyone, I wouldn't buy a contract. I'll tell you this right off the bat. I would not buy a contract, or I call a contract a debt, if there was not a third party servicing that debt. Because the third party, the escrow company, guarantees to me, in effect, that those payments have actually been made when they say they have been made. if I'm buying one from just an individual who's collected the payments, I like to believe that everybody's honest, but unfortunately that's not the case. And so if they tell me, yeah, the guy's been on time every month, and he's never missed a month, I don't know if that's true or not. And so and you don't even know exactly how much they still owe you or still owe that person. So number one is I would never buy a debt that wasn't serviced by a third party.
Does New Mexico have RMLOs?
RMLOs, I'm not familiar with that.
I don't know what the R stands for. Registered, maybe? Registered Mortgage Loan Officer. So that's a thing here in Texas where we have to run it through an RMLO. Mm-hmm. And basically, they're the loan officer. They're the ones that are creating the note because I'm not a licensed mortgage loan officer, so I can't do it myself. So it's like somewhere between $500 to $1,000 is what we pay them, and now it's considered a legitimate note that we can sell. That's big here in the state of Texas.
That's here also. The only difference is that only applies to people like you that do, I think, more than 3 a year.
Yep.
Something like that. The majority of the business my escrow company has is one person who's sold one house in their lifetime, or 2 or 3.
Yep.
There are some investors or people that do a lot more than that, and they're supposed to use those RMOs or whatever they are, but right. I'm not. I don't police that. It's not my job to police it. I'm not sure how that gets policed, but
I don't either. All I know is that once you here in the state of Texas, at least, I think here in the state of Texas, it's 5 in a year, and every state's different, right?
Yeah.
And all I know is if I read stuff like that, I'm like, hey, that's a cost that I passed off to the borrower anyways. And it protects me.
Absolutely.
I get a ton of great information back from them. I get credit score, background. And these are all things that I could go have done myself, right?
Yeah.
But all I have to do is send an email. I get it back. And now I know who my borrower is. I get their credit score back. And we're owner financing. So more often than not, you're helping someone that's in a position where they couldn't get a conventional mortgage anyways, right?
Exactly.
But now you understand why they couldn't get a conventional mortgage, right?
Yeah. And that's not always because of a bad credit score or something. I mean, a lot of times it is. And even in that case, you never know what caused someone to have that credit score. I mean, medical problems. I mean, gosh, it's ridiculously expensive if you have a medical problem or something, or someone in your family does. So that's understandable sometimes. So I don't necessarily look at credit as the end all, but it's good to have. No doubt it's great to have. The other thing about owner financing is if you're self-employed or you just started a business or you just started a job, you can't get a conventional loan a lot of times. So owner financing is the only way you can go.
Right. And I will say this, going back to your point, and I'll kind of leave it at there. The reason why I like getting the credit reports is because you're right. There could be a life-altering event like medical bills. Mm-hmm. There could have been, I lost a job and I have a foreclosure. All things that I'm completely fine with. I do start scratching my head, though, if I look, and it's like, there's $100,000 in credit card debt at Dillard's, Macy's, Nordstrom's, and I'm going, okay.
Yeah.
There's a spending problem. Is this always going to be there? And is this going to, this month's new pair of shoes going to come over rent or the mortgage payment? So
I agree with you 100%. I mean, there are people, and I hate to say this, but there are people that are just deadbeats, or, I know they're not deadbeats necessarily. They just don't know how to handle their money, and no one's ever taught them. So,
you don't really get taught that in schools.
You don't. And you've got to go out and look for that yourself. And unfortunately, some people don't have the desire or even realize they need to go look for that. So
absolutely. Yeah. Well, Terry, for everyone that's listening, what is the best way that they can connect with you and follow you?
Well, the best thing to do is go to sunwesttrust.com. That's our website for the trust company. They can click on contact us and then mention this podcast and send me a note that way. The other thing is, if they're interested in self-directed IRAs, we have a YouTube channel called Sunwest IRA, and I think I have over 200 videos there that talk about different aspects of real estate, of IRAs, and they're just 3 to 5 minutes long. They're short, so you don't have to look at me for very long. So that's a great place to go. The other thing, they can go to our website and request my book. I've written a book about self-directed IRAs. So that's a great way to get started. So any of those three things are ways that they can get in touch with me, and I'd love to start a dialogue and help them any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sitting down with us, Terry. Guys, that's this week's episode. If you enjoyed what you heard today, if you're on YouTube, give us a thumbs up. If you're on iTunes, give us a 5-star rating. Terry, thank you so much.
Thank you, RJ. I've enjoyed it.
Talk to you soon.
Take care.
Thanks so much for listening to the Titanium Vault with your host, RJ Bates III. For more info and to stay up to date, visit www.podcast.thetitaniumvault.com and on facebook.com/The Titanium Vault. If you enjoyed the episode, please rate and review, and we'll catch you next time on the Titanium Vault.